Hello everyone, welcome to a new video. Today we have a very special one, at least for me. I will be reading for you. I found some very nice books on my last trip, and this one is of Scottish tales. It has this very nice cover. It's a hardcover. As you may see, it's this light blue, slightly grey, and it has some silver writing. So we have the Anthology of Scottish folk tales. I feel like today I look like I'm about to give you the punishment of your life. Joke's on me. Statistically speaking, some of you must be into that. Anyway, that is not why we are here, right? So, I got this book in the Scotland's National Library. I've been to Scotland twice now, and I was running out of ideas of what to see. Also because I spend a bit more time this time around. So I went to the library, the girls like to read, and I wanted to check it for myself. You can't go inside because you have to have the library card and all of that jazz. But there is a very nice cafe that you can have some coffee, have some cake, and there's a book store right next to it. So I saw this book and I thought, Raven, you don't need any more books. And then on my last day there, I was like, no, I really need that book, because you would enjoy a story from the book, and I would like it as well. So here we are. Anyway, why I thought this book was interesting. It is a compilation, right? As the name indicates, of Scottish tales, folk tales. But it is separated by regions of Scotland, right? So each region has a different kind of story, right? That is sourced from there. And not only that, but it's also told by people who are from there, right? At least that's what I understood. Anyway, so I thought that the design of this book is very nice. Again, it speaks a little bit about the author, and it has a couple of stories. So, not wanting to take too much of your time, I will just go right into reading. So, the first story that I'm going to read is the story that belongs to the region of Highlands. While I was in Scotland, I went to visit some parts of Highlands, and I thought it was a magical experience. If you ever have the opportunity, and if you are into that kind of thing, because it's very specific. Some people are into, the sea, warm weather and stuff like that. I'm into dark, cold weather, rainy, and that's just me, right? If you like that kind of thing, I would recommend you to visit Highlands. Maybe it is different during the summer, however, but I don't know. So, the first story, it is called A Highland Origin Myth. Let's go. A single track road out of Loch Carron threads through the hills for a short while before it reaches the Billac. I will be butchering a lot of words here. All the Scottish people and all people who understand those words and know how to pronounce them, pretty please, with the cherry on top, don't be too mean to me. Thank you. Right. A single track road out of Loch Carron threads through the hills for a short while before it reaches the Billac, a road which follows an old traverse route. The Billac is the steepest inclinated road in Britain, ascending above Loch Kishorn in a series of hair-spin bends to the top of Sgor Ecorachian, and a view across to the Isle of Skye and the Cuillin Mountains. Down below is the village of Applecross, where Saint Melraba, an Irishman from Derry, founded a monastery in the late 7th century. The story does not begin or end here, but most of the actions take place in Applecross. A long time ago, and I mean a very long time ago, Norway was full of giants. This was a situation left over from the time of the Norse gods, when the giants had their own territory, which was called Utgard. Though they weren't the brightest of beings, they managed quite well there, seldom coming unstruck unless one of them strayed into Asgard, the realm of the gods themselves, or unless one of the gods, Odin or Loki, and particularly Thor, made a foray into Utgard. Thor, who some might call a belligerent, red-bearded bully, was never happier than when he was laying into the giants with his famous hammer, Mjolnir. Right, our door is being dragged here. Snorri Sturluson Edda says that after Ragnarok, the battle to end all battles, both gods and giants perished. But this isn't entirely true. Many of the giants, male and female, had been far too slow on the uptake to get to Ragnarok in time for the final conflict, and they were left wandering aimlessly in a wasteland, waiting for the beginning of the world as we know it today. This is how, when civilization did arrive, Norway came to be full of giants. On the whole, giants and humans got on pretty well together. There was the occasional brawl. Lady giants sometimes took a shine to gentlemen humans, but disputes of that kind will arise in any close-knit community. Generally speaking, although a certain amount of mutual partying went on at the weekends, giants and humans tended to go home to their own beds and dream their respective dreams. Just occasionally, though, a rogue giant would surface, and everything would be thrown off kilter. There was a giant called Thrym, a survivor from the bad old days who hated humans. He lived high up in the mountains, so for a long time he caused no trouble. But in time his hatred grew so intense that he began to make excursions down into the valley villages, rampaging around, biting off the heads of humans, sucking out their vital juices, and tossing away the skin and bone. Vital juices. That's one way to describe it, right? As he advanced on an unsuspecting community or an isolated farmstead, Thrym would roar, "I'm gonna find you. I'm gonna cut you. I'm going to eat you." This behavior was intolerable to both humans and giants, who had worked hard to live together in peace. So they convened a council and voted to expel Thrym from Norway. Thrym wasn't greatly bothered by this decision. He was happy to follow his lust for human juice, wherever it might lead him, so he headed out for the place we now call Scotland. The North Sea was much shallower then, and Thrym strode through waters which seldom rose about his knees, announcing as he went, "I'm gonna find you, I'm gonna catch you, I'm going to eat you." This is very curious. Seldom rose about his knees. Where I come from, there is a saying that when someone is young, the sea is barely to their knees, which means that nothing is threatening to them. And I found this curious that they describe it like this. Anyhow, we got a giant. We have Norway involved with this situation as well. So I might be offending several cultures all at once. Yay for me. After a couple of days wandering, the giant reached Shetland. I hope that is how you pronounce it. The islands were even more sparsely populated than they are today, and most of the inhabitants were trolls or trolls, more refugees from Ragnarok, who thought the universe had passed them by until Thrym came storming over the horizon. He didn't spend long in Shetland. In truth, the blood of Thro's green, viscous stuff tasted so vile that even Thrym couldn't stomach it. He didn't bother to stop in Fair Isle, more Thro's, but there were enough humans on Orkney to detain him for a while. The few who escaped hopped into their boats and made for the mainland, for Caithness, as it's now called, leaving the islands as easy pickings for a Viking takeover a couple of millennia after. Wonder what kind of time they are trying to describe. Anyway, once Oakley was devoid of humans, Thrym pursued the refugees across the Pentland Firth to Caithness. Splashing through the Swelky Swearpool, he yelled at the distant mountains of Sutherland, "I'm gonna find you. I'm going to catch you. I'm going to eat you." There's no precise record of the devastation that Thrym left in his wake on his process across the Highlands. Occasionally, archaeologists on a dig will come across an isolated skull which has nobody nearby, and they will wonder about the strange rituals of our ancestors. And their archaeological faults which can be best explained as resulting from the impact of giant footsteps. Sounds kind of scientific. Do they have any proof? I'd love to see it. But all we know for sure is that eventually Thrym came to the west coast, to the Applecross Peninsula, in the region which is now called Wester Ross. Wester Ross. That's familiar, isn't it? Wester Ross. It's separate. Right. The great mountain called Sgurr A Cowrachain, whatever. Sgurr A Cowrachain, the big conical hill of the Blaze or the Torrent, comes between Applecross and the rest of the mainland. From the far side of Sgurr, the people of Applecross heard the distant cries of approaching giant. "I'm going to find you. I'm gonna catch you. I'm going to eat you." But they were prepared for his coming. For weeks, tales of gargantuan bloodsucker had been brought in by the refugees from other parts of the Highlands. The presence of these refugees had started to cause problems, overcrowding and food shortages, and some of the Applecross folks were all for putting them on makeshift rafts and sending them over the sea to Raasay and Skye. But the community council held an extraordinary meeting and came up with a plan. A broad, deep pit was dug in the place where the Applecross campsite is today. Several dozen pine trees were felled and set in the bottom of the pit, then sharpened into massive stakes. For the next part of the plan, half of the dozen of the cheekiest Applecross children were sent up to score. The gourding, threatening voice of Thrym grew closer until at last a bolder, spiky head appeared above the highest peak, and the giant hove into the view. As soon as they saw him, the cheeky children began to throw our taunts. Dim-wit, lordybum, dim-wit lardybum was the least of them. The children, pursued by the raging, stumbling giant, skipped down the brae, across the heather, and over the burns, knowing every inch of the land. At the bottom of the mountain they scattered. The giant, propelled by his own momentum, sped on downwards. The people of Applecross had stretched a tripwire across the path just before the stake pit. Thrym never even saw the wire, for giants are short-sighted. Again, very scientific. When his ankles hit it, he flew up into the air and revolved several times before landing on the stakes in the pit. With the giant impaled, the Applecross folk swarmed down and set to work with whatever sharp implements they possessed. Penknives, hacksaws, hatchets, chainsaws were all used to dismember Thrym's body. After they had cut him into the tiniest pieces, they retired to the Applecross Inn to celebrate their victory. And in the early hours they straggled home to their own beds. Sometime in the night, nobody can remember exactly when, the people of Applecross were woken by a distant, muted noise. "I'm gonna find you," it whispered. "I'm gonna catch you," it murmured. "I'm gonna eat you," it mused. Next morning at dawn, they were out of their houses and down to the pit. There was no doubt that the tiny pieces of Thrym flesh were still alive. They were jiggling around and muttering angrily to themselves, "I'm gonna find you, I'm gonna catch you, I'm gonna eat you." The Applecross folk gathered as much kindling and dried seaweed as they could. They threw them into the pit and tossed burning brands after that. And once there was a good blaze, they fed in with chunks of peat. Peat is a type of burning substance that is used in Highlands or in Scotland. I learned that on my trip. When coal is made, it's like the plants deposits into the earth, into the ground. And peat, it's that pre-coal state of that substance, right? It burns, so that's what it is. Anyway, fed it with chunks of peat, which burns. They watched all day until the fire slowly dwindled, and by the evening there was nothing left at the bottom of the pit but a layer of fine ash. The inhabitants of Applecross looked at each other in relief and began to speak for the first time in many hours. They agreed that they had done well to rid the world of the giant, and felt it was time to celebrate again with a drink and a party. As they turned away from the pit, a faint breeze came in from the sea and lifted tiny specks of ash into the air. Each piece of ash began to speak, and thousands of little voices chorused. We are gonna find you. We are gonna catch you. We are going to eat you. That's some strong will to live this giant had. The ash cloud drifted towards the Applecross people. They began to run, pursued by a voracious horde which was indeed intent on eating them. These were the very first Highland midges. Although they began life in Applecross, they quickly spread up and down the west coast, out to the islands, and have even set up colonies in other parts of Scotland. If, like many unsuspecting visitors before you, you are caught out by them on some beautiful evening in Torridon, Gairloch, or Darness, listen as you run for cover, for those little voices keeping joyously. We are going to find you. We are going to catch you. We are going to eat you. Right, my dears, that was the first story. It's interesting. I mean, as I said, two nations are being involved, right? Norway and Scotland. I don't know if I'm supposed to call them nations. I mean, they are. Don't take me wrong. You know what? I'm gonna stop right there before I dig myself into the ground even more. Oh well. The giant was very, very strong. Apparently, his ashes are still wandering around. I didn't hear anything speaking to me, although it was raining a lot when I was in Highlands, and the wind was winding. Absolutely. Maybe the weather did not allow me to, check someone who's going to eat me. If you haven't noticed, there's a horse head here. And although the story about this creature is not in this book, maybe I missed it, but this is a Kelpie. Kelpie is a horse-like creature or it's a shapeshifter of a kind, but it's usually portrayed as a black horse. The planes are killing me today. Anyway, as I was saying, Kelpies are black horses, creatures that can shapeshift but usually are portrayed. The statues that I was saying on the highway, I may include the picture. But anyway, the story about Kelpies is that they live in the lochs, the lakes in Scotland and Ireland. So Ireland does share this type of creature. And basically they can, portray themselves as some like a pretty woman or a pretty man, or again a very pretty dark horse, right? And they attract people, and then they take them to the lake and they drown them. It's supposed to be one of the Kelpies. It's supposed to be the Loch Ness monster, Nessie, right? And I guess the whole story is coming from there. But I read about it, and a few articles do say that it is a way to scare children so they don't go too nearby the lakes, right? The lakes are deep, children could easily drown. Maybe a lot of children did drown, right? And like it's become this tale that there's a kelpie inside, or there's a monster inside that could take you, and you'll never come back. Right. I really like the cover of the book. How it shines over the water. Very nice. Anyway, I have another story for us. And the first one was from Highland, and this one is from Aberdeenshire. I also got this book separator from the library. It's like the all writing from one of the books that they have, in the library. Oh, that's very nice. Kind of cute. May delete it later. Anyway, this story is called French Gate, and it starts with what I'm assuming is a song or a poem. Most probably it's a song. Bonnie lassie, will you go? Will you go? Will you go? Bonnie lassie, will you go to the burghs of Abergaldy? Abergaldy. I'm already ruining it. I'm already ruining it. Right? Okay. Let's go again. Bonnie lassie, will you go? Will you go? Will you go? Bonnie lassie, will you go to the burghs of Abergaldy? Ya shall get a gown of silk, a gown of silk, a gown of silk. Ya shall get a gown of silk and a coat of Kalimenki. Kalimenki, Abergeldy, Kalimenki. The rhyme is there. The rhyme is rhyming. I butchered it. Bonnie Lassie means pretty girl. Craig Namban, or the Hill of the Woman near Abergeldy, is covered with magnificent birch and oak woods, and has in its side a cave where once a Pictish chief hid when his men were defeated and his tribe was scattered. The castle of Abergeldy sits on the south side of the Dee, and each is rich with artisans, sculptures, and turrets alongside a clock with a bell striking the hour. It is a 16th century tower house built by the Gordons in 1550. Quite old, very old. Birch wine was once brewed here in abundance, as well as whiskey in the many illicit stills around the area. When King George VI and his brother Bertie, King Edward VIII, stayed in the castle, they thought that the tower, infested by the bats, was haunted by the ghost of a young witch burned to death locally. It is a fact that the commissioners appointed for the trial of witches on April 6, 1597, ordered that the Laird of Abergeldy, oh my god, I'm so sorry, Abergeldy, be charged for the appearance before them at Aberdeen of Janet Gissett, accused of witchcraft. However, this is not the witch that haunts the tower, but rather the young, ill-fated Katir Oh, come on! What is this combination of Katir, Fhrangach, Frangach. I'll go with that. Or French Kate. Thank goodness. Okay. French Kate, otherwise known as, oh my god, can we not have 3 names? Otherwise known as Kitty Rankin, a young French girl who acted as maid to the Lady Gordon. There are Rankins to this day living in Deeside, so the name lived on after the girl's death. The tale is an old one, easily told. The lord of the castle was away in France on business, and his lady was lonely and jealous, as women have done since time immemorial. She turned to the black arts to see if she could divine whether or not her husband was remaining faithful to her on his long journey away from home. Kitty Rankin, her maid, was a noted practitioner of the soothsayer skills. The lady decided to avail herself of Kitty's abilities. The girl was taken before her mistress and told to use her power to reveal how the lord of the castle was spending his nights. She peered into the magic mirror, obscured by mist. At a word from her, the mist cleared, and the Lady Gordon could clearly see her husband wooing a young and attractive Frenchwoman on his way home from France. "Is this how my lord treats me? You have the means to strike him down, drown the wretch," cried the lady. That's shady doings. Anyway, and so Kitty had a huge cauldron taken to the top of the castle to be filled with water, and an empty wooden bowl sat floating on it like a gallant ship on the sea. Down went the young witch, down to the castle cellar, and there she began to incant a spell for raising a storm. Kitty could control wind, rain, thunder, and lightning using the magic she had learned. First, she dug a hole in the earth of cellar, poured a little water in it, and, cutting a strand of her long fair hair, steered it into the mud. Withershins. Round and round the wind I mix, shake a boat with eldred tricks, bring a storm to all on board, let it founder, ship and lord. Incantation. Round and round the wind I mix, shake a boat with eldred tricks, bring a storm to all aboard, let it founder, ship and lord. Away up in the tower, the water in the cauldron began to shiver. Waves appeared on the surface, and the wooden bowl began to rock unsteadily. As Kitty's chanting grew louder, the waves in the bowl grew higher and higher. Soon the wooden bowl was being flung about like seeds in a sieve. All this time, the Lady Gordon looked on, tight-lipped. The water leaped up and down wildly in the cauldron, spilling and splashing over the sides. Then the wooden bowl was swamped by the large wave and sank. As in the cauldron, so at sea, Kitty told her mistress, "Your husband's drowned along with his fancy woman." The lady began to hope that Kitty's Ranky's powers were not so strong. Perhaps her husband was saved after all. But then word came to the castle that the Lord of Abergeldy had been drowned in a terrible storm, which had whipped up from nowhere. No one survived. Well done. Now that the Lady of Abergeldy was a widow, she grew anxious that folk in the area could lay blame on her. She condemned Kitty as a witch and claimed that girl had acted out of malice against the family. Robert McCreary, the wizard, was set on her trail. Immediately she changed herself into a hare. "I shall go into a hare, with sorrow and psyche and meikle care. And I shall go in the devil's name, a while I come home again. But Robert Mercury changed himself into a hound until she cried out, Hare, hare, God send thee care. I am in a hare's likeness now, but I shall be in a woman's likeness even now. And from a hare to a woman, she changed herself into a mouse. But Robert Mercury changed himself into a weasel and caught her by the tail. Wriggle as she might, he was more powerful than her, and she was forced to change into her human form. They led her before the sheriff, and the verdict of guilty was swift. Our kitty was taken, trusted like a roast, to the summit of Great Namban, and there she was burned at a stake. To this day men claim to hear her ghostly death screams echoing over the dark waters of the deep. And that's the end of that story. It's interesting as well. I guess what we learned today, there are some enchantments that you can use to, if you ever need to drown a boat, which I wouldn't recommend if it has people on it, even if you don't like them, okay? There are better ways to do this. But if you ever need to drown a boat, there you go. Anyway, don't take me seriously. Sometimes I say things and people don't understand that I say them for fun. You know that meme that, like, it's a girl pouring tea and there's a cup, and like my sense of humor and like people thinking that there's something wrong with my mental health? Exactly that. Anyway, it was a pleasure as always to see you here today. I hope you enjoy these short stories, and if you did, please do like. If you want to see my face again, please do subscribe, and